Hi guys, this is Dan. Welcome back to my channel. I remember back in those days, which makes me sound so old, I used to watch quite a lot of fantasy book recommendation to pick up my next read because at that time I was still quite new to this genre and didn't know where to start. Now I start to read more, stepping out of my comfort zone and try to pick up my own read. Not just the good old epic fantasy, but there are other subgenres that slowly gaining the love from this community. I also read some of your comments. Some of you are still quite new to this genre. So I am thinking, why not make a fantasy starter pack? Like its name, in today's video, I will recommend some fantasy books for those of you who just started this genre. What makes it more special is that I am not just going to talk about all those very well-known good old epic fantasy series that you probably heard of, but also some hidden gems that I recently discovered, and they are actually in different subgenres. You will know what I mean when we get to them. It is pretty exciting. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel Fantasy so you won't miss anything exciting from me. You can also follow my Instagram for more daily updates, or you can support me by becoming my Patreon or visiting my Ko-fi. All the links are in the description down below. So without further ado, let's dive into this fantasy book recommendation. Maybe we can begin with the good old epic fantasy. If you are into fantasy, you would definitely hear about Sanderson and his Cosmere. There are lots of different books and series in this universe, let's say the Mistborn, Stormlight Archive, or the recent Secret Project. Thinking this now, especially with more books slowly added to this universe, it is quite intimidating and you will probably have no idea where to start. Although you can start pretty freely here, there's no official reading order. If I need to pick a book from this universe for those of you who don't read much fantasy or want to get the charm of Sanderson, I would pick Warbreaker by Sanderson. At this moment, this book is still a standalone, but in the future, potentially there could be more books because of how open the ending is, but still at this stage, it is still a standalone. I remember when I picked this one up maybe a couple of years ago, I was pretty busy, but still I can manage to finish it in just like a couple of days because this one is a fast-paced page turner. What I do love about this book is the plot, the character, and the magic system. This book is about a pair of sisters. They are both princesses, and one of them was arranged to marry this supposedly brutal god king. But the youngest sister, Siri, want to help her sister out and decided to marry this god king herself. Seeing her sister is potentially in danger, Vivanna want to help her sister from this monstrous god king. When the plot expands, we will get to know more about this supposedly monstrous brutal god king called Lightson. I was a bit shocked when that little twist come around. Also in this world, the magic system is quite fascinating. It is called Breathe. You can accumulate it to certain level and perform different power. Enhance your abilities or senses, animate objects, or even achieve immortality. With Sanderson, it is quite magical when the magic system come to life and keep you intrigued. I think this book is such a good starting point for those of you who want to get into Cosmere and learn more about Sanderson. If you have finished this book and found Sanderson interesting or you want to explore more about this universe, feel free to do so. The world is your oysters. There's so many books for you to read in Cosmere. Some of the books in this universe do have connection to Warbreaker. By the way, this book is completely free on Sanderson website, which I didn't know before. And I mean, it is the whole book, not just like the preview of one chapter. So there's no reason not to check this book out. The next genre I have is the one I quite like. I do have a soft spot for it. It is Asian-inspired fantasy. If I need to choose just one to recommend, it is going to be my all-time favorite. You will like it, especially if you are into character growth. I have the Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee. The first book is Jade City, second book Jade War, and the last book is Jade Legacy. Sorry about the little mess I have just now. I think I should hold the first book to avoid any spoilers from the cover. So here we go, Jade City, the first book of the series. It is honestly such an emotional roller coaster for me to read this whole series, and it has also become my favorite series of 2024. If you haven't heard about this series before, basically it is inspired by the Southeast Asian gangster culture. It is mainly about the clan wars between two rivalries in K-Con. We will follow the No Peak clan and its leading family, the Cows, or the Cows. We have the siblings, Lan, Hilo, Shay, and the cousin, Andon, as our perspectives, but there's gonna be more when the story expands. The No Peak clan want to maximize their advantage in this war against their rivalry, the Mountain clan, because of the difference in their beliefs. Throughout these 3 books, we will see how these 2 clans gonna outsmart each other, at the same time following the dynamics of this Cows family. And I mean, it is like such a long journey. It is not like something that's going to be finished in just like 1 or 2 years, but much longer than that. Even though they are born within the same family, how they act or what they believe is so different from each other, maybe because of how they are raised, what they believe is good for the family, or even about romance. So it is pretty interesting to see how these family members try to settle their conflicts within the same family, but at the same time they have to think about their rival, the Mountain clan. What I do love the most about this Greenbone Saga is about the characters. All of them from book 1 to book 3 will go through a lot, and I mean a lot. You would root for them, you would care about them, or even cry with them. I am impressed by the character work here, how much they have grown and how much they have learned on this journey. The clan is my blood, the pillar is its master. You will get what I mean by the time you finish the last book. It is so emotional. Also, there will be some local and global politics because these 2 clans want to win over each other. There will, of course, you can tell from this cover, some martial art fighting scenes. I would highly recommend this series if you are into Asian-inspired fantasy or maybe well-written characters. One thing to note about this series though is that this book, the first one, do start quite slow, but once you hit that point, you wouldn't want to put this series down, and I do mean it. Moving on to the next genre, it is the one that I secretly love. I'm not sure how many of you would know about it, but like from anime or maybe from TV series, I always love it, mystery. I have read significantly more fantasy mystery last year, and I think it is such an underrated genre. It is just so interesting to see the balance between the magic system in a fantasy world, something that is supernatural, and then we have mystery, something that you have to give a logical explanation. If I need to just pick one up and not repeating myself, if I'm being honest here, I want to pick up the Tainted Cup again, but instead we have Voyage of the Damned by Francis White. It is a murder mystery that is set in a celebration voyage. 12 heirs from 12 provinces of Concordia embark a sea journey to the sacred Goddess Mountain. Every single one of these heirs will got a special magical power called blessing, but they won't tell each other what is it exactly. Even though they are so careful, none of them would expect there's gonna be a series of murders on this journey. Our main character in this book is Ganymedes, a class clown and all-round disappointment. Seeing these heirs were murdered one by one, he decided to play the detective and try to find out who is the mastermind behind. During this investigation, Ganymedes will interview every possible suspect, and I mean all those living heirs. At the same time, he has to hide a very important fact. He has no special power, no blessing at all. I would say it is just so much fun to see Ganymedes try to play the detective and find out the truth. And I mean, Ganymedes got this kind of British humor that some of you may like or some of you may not get it. I also love that during this investigation, most of these heirs has to open up about their past or maybe confront their fears. The motive behind all these murders is also quite political driven. I found the balance between this murder investigation, dynamic growth, romance, adventure, action, political world building is just right. If you enjoy a murder mystery but fancy a change to see how fantasy do this genre, you may want to check this book out. Speaking of murder mystery, something that is bloody and brutal, maybe we can move on to talk about another gruesome genre, horror. I feel like recently there are some really interesting fantasy horror, even though Halloween is like long way ahead, or maybe we can say we just celebrated. I'm glad that I explored this genre a little bit because I didn't expect I would like it. To pick one to recommend, I have Grave Empire by Richard Swan, the first book of the Great Silence series, which is also a brand new release. Now this one is great if you are into horror. In short, it is about the Empire of the Wolf, which is basically the strongest nation right now, but it is facing two problems. The first one is about a contagious, mysterious plague broke out in the north. The second one is about the Great Silence, meaning the end of the world. With this message, Ranita, a young ambassador, was sent to negotiate with the Stygian, a merfolk civilization. Peter, a newly commissioned officer in the army, experiencing some paranormal phenomenon. A Senate von Oldenburg is conducting some inhuman experiment. What I do love about this book is how Richard Swan wrote this kind of horror supernatural phenomenon. It is eerie and disturbing with all of this like weird noise, weird screaming, hallucination, disassembled body parts, weird rituals. It would definitely make you feel uncomfortable, but in a good way with all those questions you may have along the way. This book will also have some modern battles which gonna be strategic, and of course with negotiation there's gonna be some political intrigue as well. I did struggle with the pacing of this one, but I am still interested to see what's gonna happen in the sequels. If you are into dark horror fantasy, you shouldn't miss this one out. The last genre I have in this starter pack is cozy fantasy. It is honestly a genre that I didn't know I would love because before, I didn't get the charm of it. I always had this question in my mind, what does cozy mean in a fantasy book? But this year, or maybe starting by the end of last year, I decided to step out of my comfort zone, putting down my prejudice and explore what's so special about cozy fantasy. To me, cozy fantasy is great, especially if I have just finished a very thick and dense epic fantasy book. It is such a refreshing palate cleanser. Cozy fantasy is not epic, but filled with life lessons or maybe heartwarming moments with a smaller adventure. In here, I have two recommendations for you guys. The first one I have is The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leung. I have recently finished this one, and honestly, this book changed how I see about cozy fantasy. It is about our main character, Tao, who is a small fortune teller. She would travel from village to village in the rural and offer insights to people's daily life. One day, very unexpectedly, a reform thief, an ex-mercenary, a baker, and a cat hop on the wheels and join this journey. What they all want to do is to find the missing daughter of this ex-mercenary. On this journey, they will travel and see the world together. Sometimes they may even meet some mythical creatures. But most importantly, we will get to learn the reason why Tao is so reluctant to tell significant fortune. What I do love about this book is the adventure itself. There's not gonna be very epic, very bloody battle. There's not gonna be like super groundbreaking magic system, or don't have like 180 after 180 twist, but filled with life lessons and little heartwarming moments. If you are in a bit of a hard time or feel a bit under stress, you may be able to take one or two lessons from this book. I also appreciate how certain social issues were addressed in this book, like immigration, how immigrants need to get used to an unfamiliar, strange culture, how they're gonna be perceived by society, and of course, how much they're gonna miss their home and family. Overall, it is a heartwarming adventure. If you're looking for something that is easy, shorter to read, or maybe something meaningful, this one is for you. The last one I have on this list is another cozy fantasy that I did enjoy. We have Sorcery and Small Magics by Margadusi, the first book of the Wildsong trilogy, and I think it is such a cute book. Like the Teller of Small Fortunes, it is also a little adventure about Leo, who is once again a master of small magics. I know I am repeating the same plot here, but I promise it is a different book. But one day he makes up a grand spell, making him emotionally rely on his long-term nemesis called Grimm. No one can find out Leo's mistake. He has tried whatever he can to undo this magic, but the only solution left is to travel to the Forbidden Wood with Grimm. I guess what I do like about this book is so similar to the Tale of Small Fortunes. It is a little adventure, but this one is slightly more dramatic. Leo is a fun person, but he got his own secrets, making him not to play with bigger magics. So I do love how Leo slowly opening up his feelings, his fears to Grimm, and don't forget, Grimm is his long-term nemesis, and their interaction is quite interesting and fun as well. It is really an entertaining read, and I would definitely keep an eye on any sequels from this series because the ending is quite open and we still got quite a lot to explore. So these are all the books I want to include in this fantasy starter pack. I hope these books are not like the ones that you always see in other recommendations, and you may be able to pick one or two to add to your TBR. So if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to my channel Fantasy so you won't miss anything from me. I'll see you all real soon. Goodbye!